All right, let's begin our session for this week. This week is week number week number seven, week seven, and this is our 5th session for this semester. We started off with talking about security, defining security, understanding the concept of security. We moved on to the China threat. The China threat is the main focus of the Indo-Pacific narrative, security narrative, and it has influenced greatly the foreign policy of India, Japan, Australia, America, and uh, the European countries, especially Great Britain, including Canada. And this week we are on our theme for this week is cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is a non-traditional security issue, and it came about because of globalization and the uh, advancement of internet technology. We are now using technology at a rapid pace, and a lot of people are putting things online, information, data. So cybersecurity is now a very controversial and a hot topic in PNG and around the world. So without further delay, I now leave the floor to our first presenter representing Group 1, Ms. Tuna, to share with us the answer to the assigned question.
Hi everyone, can you guys hear me? Yes, can you hear me? Okay. So good morning everyone. Like Mr. said, I'm gonna be presenting on behalf of Group 1. So our question is, what are the types of cyber threat representations according to Cavelty? So before I go into answering the question, I will first define what cyber threat is. So according to Cavelty, she defines it as a new kind of threat to national security and to the very foundations of developed societies. So she describes it as the malicious use of information and communication technologies, or ICT, either as a target or as a tool by a wide range of malevolent actors, end quote. So basically she defines cyber threat as a malicious act that seeks to disrupt online data. So now going on to answering the question itself. So throughout my reading, I've identified 3 different types of cyber threat representations according to Cavelty. So she notes that the representations, actors play a big role in creating these different types of representations. So I've identified 3. So the first one being, this representation is of the who wins, when, and why question. So in this representation, the functional actors that play a big role in influencing this representation. So functional actors are external or outside influencing factors. So that's the first representation. So on to the second representation is the systems of representation and systems of power. So this is where organizations and institutions are the main influencers. So she describes them as dependable variables. And finally, the third and final representation is representation in media. So she defines media influences as the media influences the process of threat through different indicators, so focusing events or formal and informal feedback. So she states that it plays a role of riding the wave of the topic and bring the issue to attention of the public. But according to her, it does not play the role of shaping the issue in the political process. So those are the 3 different types of cyber threat representations that we have identified. So that answers the question. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tuna, and thank you, Group 1, for sharing with us your answer to the question. We now move on to Group 2. Mr. Simeon is the representative or person representing Group 2. Mr. Simeon, please go ahead.
Can you hear me? All right, for the group twos, our question is, what is the difference between cyber war and cyber terrorism according to Cavalti? So before we go into differentiating cyber war from cyber terrorism, let's look at the atmosphere in which both cyber war and cyber terrorism take place. So the atmosphere is known as the cyberspace. Cyberspace, which was formerly known as cybernetics, according to Cavalti 2013 in her book titled From Cyber Bombs to Political Fallout, Trends, Threats and Representations with an Impact in the Cybersecurity Discourse, page 107, she categorized them into two divisions, mainly between the hardware components of a computer network and the different layers of information and abstraction of information riding on a physical layer of hardware. For short, cyberspace is seen as in both virtual and material realm. Now let us define cybersecurity. Cybersecurity, according to the Economics Times 2022, is the technique of protecting computers, networks, programs, and data from unauthorized access or attacks that are aimed for exploitation. Now, to differentiate in cyber war from cyber terrorism, it is important to know the meanings of these two terms. So cyber war and cyber terrorism. RAND Corporation defines cyber warfare as the actions by a nation state or an international organization to attack and attempt to damage another nation's computers and information networks. Cyber warfare has grave consequences and can cause havoc to government and civilian infrastructure and disrupt critical systems, resulting in damage to the state. On the other hand, cyber terrorism are purposeful acts personally or politically motivated that is intended to disrupt and destroy the stability of an organization or national interest through the use of electronic devices which are directed at information systems, computer programs, or other electronic means of communication, transfer, and storage. Cyber terrorism can be identified as the ideological, political, or religious or social motivations that result in instilling terror, that are destructive or disruptive to generate fear, which leave a forceful or brutal impact. Therefore, when differentiated, cyber war usually involves nation states attempting to attack another nation through espionage or monitoring other countries to steal secret sabotage of government sensitive information, denial of service attacks where legitimate users are prevented from accessing websites, attacking power grid, propaganda attacks, economic disruption, or surprise attacks. While cyber terrorism is instilling fear in others for political, social, ideological, or religious reasons. So thank you, and that's all from me.
Thank you, Monica and Group 2, for helping us understand the difference between cyber war and cyber terrorism. We now move on to the third and last presenter for this period, Ms. Wariupa. Ms. Wariupa will be representing Group 3. Tanya, please go ahead.
Thank you. Can you all hear me? Okay, so our question for this week's seminar is, what is the difference between structured and unstructured threats according to Cavalti? Before I go on to differentiating structured and unstructured threats, I'd like to give a brief account on how these terms came about. So what happened was, in the 1990s, the US military was the main driving force behind the shaping of threat perception. And because of its involvement, security experts feared that enemies who lost in a conflict to US would most possibly resort to other means to attack US. And by other means, I mean asymmetric means, which include weapons of mass destruction, information operations, or terrorism. So at that time, US was a technological environment, and well, technological environments have the tendency to connect everything to everything. These connections between the internet and everything put US at a risk of being attacked by using databases, advanced computer systems, and telecommunication networks that made electronic information widely available to not only to attack their military, but the entire nation or the entire nation, sorry. So because of this, the US was pushed to come up with measures to counter the rise of a new threat, which is cyber terrorism. And like any other national security strategies, in order to counter threats, they have to be categorized so you are aware of how much damage it causes and be well prepared for it. Or in this case, reduce greater costs on trying to patch all safety gaps. Sorry, excuse me. So because there was evidence that threats went beyond hackers and criminal elements and that they arise also from terrorist groups and nation states, they categorized a wide range of actors into two groups with fluent boundaries based on organizational complexity. So according to Cavelty, the first contains recreational or institutional hackers and organized crime, and the second contains terrorists and nation states. The first sometimes is described as an unstructured threat, while the latter is considered a structured threat. So on page 88 of her book, Cybersecurity and Threat Politics, she explains that the unstructured threat is random and it's relatively limited. It consists of adversaries with limited funds and organization and short-term goals. These actors have limited resources, tools, skills, and funding to accomplish a sophisticated attack and also lack the motivation to do so. It isn't considered a danger to national security and is not usually the concern of the national security community. However, these attacks could cause considerable damage, mainly in the economic realm. The structured threat, on the other hand, is more methodical and better supported. Adversaries from this group have all source intelligence support, extensive funding, organized professional support, and long-term goals. Foreign intelligence services, criminal elements, and professional hackers involved in information warfare, criminal activities, or industrial espionage are also included in this threat category. She goes on to further stating, and I quote, "The boundaries between the two categories are not always clear. Even though the unstructured threat is not of direct concern for national security, it is still fair that a structured threat actor could masquerade as an unstructured threat actor, or that structured actors could seek the help of technological apt individuals from the other group." Close, end quote. Yeah, thank you, Mr. That's all. Everyone.
Okay, thank you, Veretani and Group 3 for helping us understand the difference between structured and unstructured threat. So that brings us to the end of our session for this period. And if you have any questions or comments for Group 1, 2, and 3, please note them down and you can post after this session. We have around, I think, 30 minutes remaining before the closing time at 11:30, or you can post tomorrow during our double period from 10:30 to 12:30. Okay, so once again, I would like to thank the presenters, beginning with Tanali and Modikai and concluding with Delatania for your time and for sharing with us the knowledge that you have gained from the literature and for representing your group 1, 2, and 3. And I thank all attendees on Zoom as well as Facebook. And like I said, if you have any questions, comments, please participate on our Moodle forums for this week. Moodle forum for this week, week 7. So that is all for today. Apologies for the inconvenience caused by the network. It's something that is beyond our control, but it's good that we were able to give time to the 3 presenters to present today. And tomorrow we have the 4 presenters representing group 4, 5, 6, and 7. So that is all for today. Thank you everyone for attending, and see you all tomorrow again on Zoom. You all have a good day. It's raining and make sure you keep yourself warm and stay indoors. Avoid the wet weather outside. Okay, you all have a good day.